wind howled across the barren Wyoming plains, carrying with it the distant echo of an approaching train, an iron beast cutting through the heart of the Old West. On the night of August 29, 1900, that beast would be tamed, not by the law but by a group of outlaws so bold, their names still send shivers down spines over a century later. The leader, none other than the infamous Butch Cassidy, a man who had become a living legend, a symbol of the untamed spirit of the American West. But this wasn't just any robbery. This was the Union Pacific train heist, a meticulously planned raid that will go down in history as one of the most daring and lucrative robberies of the Wild West. Howdy folks, today we're diving into the dust and danger of that fateful night. We'll uncover the cunning plan that Butch Cassidy and his gang, the Wild Bunch, hatched to steal a staggering $70,000, a fortune that will be worth over $2 million today. We'll follow the outlaws step by step as they execute their daring plan with nerves of steel and pistols at the ready. But what made this heist so legendary? How on earth did they pull it off? And what was the aftermath for the gang that had become the most wanted men in America? It's the late summer of 1900 and the sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows over the vast Wyoming landscape. The air is thick with the scent of sagebrush and dust. The only sounds are the distant howl of a coyote and the rhythmic chug of a locomotive engine cutting through the night. The Union Pacific train, a colossal machine of steel and steam, barrels through the desolate plains, carrying with it more than just passengers. It's loaded with a fortune, a tantalizing target for those bold enough to take it. The night sky is an endless expanse, dotted with stars as seen to flicker in anticipation. There is a palpable tension in the air, as if the land itself knows that something big is about to happen. The train's headlights pierce through the darkness, illuminating the twisted silhouettes of the jagged mountains and the occasional cluster of trees. But it's not enough to reveal the shadows lurking just beyond its reach. For somewhere out there, hidden in the inky blackness, a group of men waits. They are the Wild Bunch, Butch Cassidy's infamous group of outlaws known for their precision, daring, and ruthlessness. The Wyoming night is their ally, offering the perfect cover as they lie in wait. These men aren't just any outlaws, they're legends in their own right, and they know this land like the back of their hand. The rustle of a distant branch, the faintest glimmer of light reflecting off a revolver. These are the only hints of their presence. Each man has a role to play, each movement trained to perfection in the plan that's about to unfold. As the train approaches the designated spot, the Wild Bunch's hearts pound in unison with the train's relentless rhythm. The stage is set, the players are in position, and the night is about to explode into chaos. This is the calm before the storm, the moment of stillness that makes what's about to happen even more electrifying. The Union Pacific train is mere seconds away from its fate, and with it, the Wild West is on the cusp of one of its most legendary chapters. In just moments, the tranquility of this Wyoming night will be shattered by gunfire, shouts, and the roar of an explosion. But for now, there's only the silence and the promise of what's to come. At the center of it all was Robert Leroy Parker, aka Butch Cassidy. Born in 1866 in the rugged backcountry of Utah, Butch Cassidy wasn't always destined for a life of crime. In fact, his early years were spent as the eldest of 13 children in a devout Mormon family. But the wide-open spaces of the American West called to him, and by his late teens, Butch had already developed a taste for adventure and a disdain for the constraints of the law. Butch wasn't your typical outlaw. He was charming, intelligent, and in many ways, a man of principle. He wasn't driven by cruelty or a thirst for blood. Instead, Butch saw himself as a sort of Robin Hood of the West, targeting the wealthy banks and railroads that had come to symbolize greed and exploitation. His wit and charisma made him a natural leader, and it wasn't long before he began assembling a group of like-minded men who shared his love for freedom and disdain for authority. This group would become known as the Wild Bunch, a collection of outlaws, gunslingers, and renegades who would go down in history for their daring escapades and close-knit friendship. Among the Wild Bunch, one man stands out almost as much as Butch Cassidy's, the Sundance Kid. Born Harry Alonso long ago, Sundance was the perfect complement to Butch. While Butch was the planner, the thinker, Sundance was the sharpshooter, the action man, just like Dutch Vanderland and Arthur Morgan from Red Dead 2. Together, they formed a bond that was as strong as it was legendary. A partnership that would see them through countless heists, narrow escapes, and eventually the most daring robbery of their careers. The Wild Bunch wasn't just a gang of outlaws. They were strategists, meticulous in their planning, and always one step ahead of the law. As the summer of 1900 heated up, so did their ambitions. The target you already know, the Union Pacific Overland Flyer number 3, a train known to carry a substantial fortune in payroll and valuables. The plan they devised was as audacious as it was brilliant, a high-stakes gamble that, if executed correctly, would make them legends. Butch Cassidy was the mastermind behind the operation. He knew that timing and precision were everything. The first step was gathering intelligence. The gang spent weeks studying the train schedule, pinpointing the perfect location to strike, a place near Tipton, Wyoming, a remote spot where the train would be isolated, far from any towns or lawmen who could come to its aid. The location was chosen with care. The terrain offered natural cover, with rocky outcrops and dense brush that would conceal their approach until it was too late for the train crew to react. Butch divided the gang into specific roles, each member playing a crucial part in the plan. The Sundance Kid, with his deadly accuracy, would take the lead, ensuring that anyone who posed a threat was neutralized quickly and efficiently. Harvey Logan, better known as Kid Curry, was the muscle. A man feared for his ruthlessness, would handle any unexpected resistance. The others, including Billy Kilpatrick and Will Carver, were to secure the passengers and guard the rear, ensuring no one could escape to raise the alarm. Each man knew his role down to the smallest detail, and they rehearsed the plan over and over again until it was second nature. The gang's plan hinged on stopping the train at just the right moment. To do this, they would need to disable the track ahead of the train, forcing it to a halt exactly where they wanted it. Butch Cassidy, ever the thinker, had arranged for an accomplice to signal the engineer, pretending to be a railroad employee in distress. The moment the train slowed, the Wild Bunch would strike. They had even calculated the time it would take for word to reach the nearest telegraph station and for the law to be alerted, giving them just enough time to complete the heist and vanish into the night. But there was one more critical element: the safe. The Union Pacific was known to transport large sums of money, and Butch had it on good authority that the train would be carrying a shipment worth $70,000. But this was no ordinary safe. It was a state-of-the-art steel fortress designed to be impenetrable. Butch had anticipated this and had brought along some dynamite, enough to blast the safe open and access the treasure inside. The gang would have to work quickly though. The explosion would be loud, and they knew they had limited time before the sound would draw unwanted attention. In the night before the heist, the Wild Bunch gathered one last time to go over the plan. The tension was palpable, but so was the confidence. These men had pulled off impossible feats before, and they were ready to do it again. As they mounted their horses and rode towards the rendezvous point, the gravity of what they were about to do weighed heavily on them. The train was about to be stopped in its tracks. The plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. All that remained was the execution, and with it, the promise of glory or disaster. The night had settled into a tense, suffocating silence as the Wild Bunch crouched in the shadows, eyes fixed on the distant glow of the approaching train. The rhythmic clatter of the Union Pacific Overland Flyer number 3 grew louder with each passing second, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Butch Cassidy and his gang were hidden among the rocks and brush, their breath barely visible in the cool night air. Every muscle in their bodies was taut with anticipation, every heartbeat synchronized with the thrum of the locomotive. This was it, the moment they had meticulously planned for, the moment that would either seal their fate or elevate them to the stuff of legends. The signal came, a flicker of light from the side of the track, the all clear from their accomplice. Butch Cassidy's hand tightened on the reins, his knuckles white. He gave a sharp nod to the Sundance Kid, who had his rifle trained on the engineer's cabin. The train's headlamp pierced through the darkness, illuminating the tracks in a straight line towards the ambush point. In one fluid motion, the Wild Bunch sprang into action, a well-oiled machine executing a flawless plan. The train screeched as it hit the sabotage point. Rails loosened just enough to jolt the locomotive into a crawl. The engineer's shot of confusion was swallowed by the night as he struggled to regain control. But it was too late. The Wild Bunch was already on them. Sundenskid's shot rang out, shattering the stillness, the bullet whizzing past the engineer's ear. A warning, a command to halt. The train groaned to a stop. The massive iron beast, subdued by a handful of men under deadly precision. Butch Cassidy was the first to board, his revolver gleaming in the dim light of the train's lanterns. His boots thudded against the steel of the carriage as he moved with a predator's grace, his eyes scanning for any sign of resistance. Behind him, the rest of the gang flowed onto the train like a wave of shadows, their movements swift and silent. They worked with a practiced efficiency. Sundance securing the engineer, Kid Curry and Ben Kilpatrick storming the passengers' cars, their weapons drawn or their intentions clear. No one needed to get hurt as long as they cooperated. The passengers jolted awake. By the sudden stop, were wide-eyed with fear. They knew who these men were. Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch, the most feared outlaws in the West. However, there was no time for panic. Kid Curry's voice sliced through the air, calm but firm, as he ordered them to stay in their seats, hands visible. No one dared move. The tension so thick was suffocating. Outside, the wind picked up, howling as if in anticipation of the chaos about to erupt. Meanwhile, Butch Cassidy and the Sundenskid had made their way to the express car, the real prize. The safe loomed before them, a hulking mass of steel that promised a fortune inside. Butch motioned for the dynamite, his face set in steely determination. The train might be stopped, but the clock was ticking. They had mere minutes before someone somewhere would realize something was wrong and send for help. The fuse was lit, the sizzle of the spark, the only sound in the deafening silence of the night. And then the explosion. The blast rocked the train, a deafening roar that sent shrapnel and debris flying in all directions. The force of it rattled through the Wild Bunch, but they stood their ground unflinching. Smoke billowed from the express car, the acrid smell of burning metal filling the air. As the dust settled, Butch Cassidy moved in, his heart pounding with a mix of adrenaline and anticipation. The door to the safe hung crookedly on its hinges, blown wide open. Inside, stacks of cash, bonds, and gold glimmered in the flickering light. $70,000, enough to set them up for life. But there was no time to savor the victory. The Wild Bunch moved quickly, their hands steady as they scooped up the loot and stuffed it into their saddlebags. Outside, the horses pawed at the ground, sensing the urgency. The plan had gone off without a hitch, but Butch Cassidy knew better than to linger. He gave the signal, and the gang mounted up, the weight of the stolen fortune heavy against their sides. The dust had barely settled when the Wild Bunch slipped back into the shadows, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins as they made their escape into the vast, unforgiving wilderness of Wyoming. The Union Pacific train, once a symbol of unstoppable progress, was now a smoldering relic of the night's audacity. Butch Cassidy and his gang had pulled off the impossible, and as the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, they rode with the acceleration of men who had just cheated fate. The route was carefully chosen, back roads, hidden trails, and places where no lawman would dare to follow. The gang knew the terrain like the back of their hands. Every ridge, every creek, a part of the landscape they had mastered over years of outlaw living. They had done it. They had stopped a train, blown open an impenetrable safe, and made off with $70,000, all without a single casualty. Among them are the passengers. It was a clean job, executed with the precision of a military operation. The Wild Bunch had cemented their place in the annals of history, their names whispered with a mixture of fear and admiration. The dynamite had done its job. The loot was secure, and the gang was already miles away from the scene of the crime. As the sun climbed higher, warming the chill of the early morning, a sense of relief washed over them. They had survived another job, and not just any job, the biggest, boldest heist they had ever attempted. The Settings kid, usually stoic and reserved, allowed himself a rare moment of levity. The tension that had gripped them for weeks leading up to the robbery was finally beginning to ease, replaced by a feeling of triumph. The Wild Bunch had pulled off the impossible. As they got to their camp and drifted off to sleep, the loot securely hidden, they knew they had won this round. And for Butch Cassidy and his gang, there was no greater feeling in the world. But this is just one chapter in the vast, thrilling saga of the Wild West. If you've been gripped to the tale of Butch Cassidy and his Wild Bunch, then you're in for a ride, because in this other video right here, I talk about the very debated and shady moment in which Butch Cassidy supposedly met his demise, not in the United States, but in Bolivia, a place where he fled to once the heat became way too high in America. However, the Pinkertons wouldn't let the escape that easily. Thank you for riding along with us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from the Wild West. And always remember, folks, to keep your boots dusty, your spirits high, and I'll see you on the next time.